Hello, everyone, and welcome to my podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about professional hate cards, or hate cards with upside, aka cards that hurt specific archetypes or deck constructions without having one of the most negative downsides of hate cards being too narrow. Now, you may be thinking, what does that mean? Well, let's get into it with one of maybe the most popular ones that are played in Commander, and maybe you'll see what I'm talking about. This is a card, Shadow Spear. One colorless for legendary artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 and has trample and lifelink. It has an ability, pay one colorless. Permanents your opponent's control lose hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. And equip 2. Now you may be thinking, what is hate and how does this have upside? Now this hates on one of the most popular spells in Commander, protection spells. Protection spells are spells that protect your opponent's creatures by giving them some slew of words and making them hard to target or hard to kill. And this equipment right here will just be like, yeah, your protection spells, I can just pay one to ignore them. So people's deck construction, they have to think more about cards like these. And if people don't cast protection spells, you have the upside of having an equipment that gives your one of your creatures trample and lifelink, some of the best keywords in Magic the Gathering. So this is what I kind of mean when I am saying hate cards with upside. Hate cards that hurt an aspect of your opponent's deck while also having a little bit of upside, like trample and lifelink on an equipment. This next card is Scalding Viper. It's an adventure, so it has you can cast it for two modes. You can cast it for its adventure mode, which is 1 and a blue, and says return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. And on an adventure, if you cast it for its adventure, you'll exile this card and you can cast the creature side for later on. And the creature side is a 1 and a red. Whenever an opponent casts a spell with mana value 3 or less, Scalding Viper deals 1 damage to that player. Now this hates on very low curve decks, especially Storm. And it has an upside of having a sorcery that can return any non-land permanent to its owner's hand. Which means that at any point in the game, if your opponents are just playing big spells and you're not going to make a big use out of the body side, you can always cast the adventure side, which is where this card has upside in. Alright, the next card that I'm going to talk about, this card is, I learned about this tech from another podcast. Is Gleeful Arsonist. 2 colorless, 1 red. Creature, human, wizard. Whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell, Gleeful Arsonist deals damage equal to its power to that player. And it has Undying. And what Undying is if this creature would die if it had no counters on it, you return it to the battlefield under its opponent's control with a 1/1 counter on it. Now, you may be thinking, ooh, hating on non-creature spells, we're going to hate on Storm some more. And you're right. We're going to hate on some Storm spells, on maybe some Enchantress decks, and some other decks that really aren't always that fair. And you may be thinking, well, what's the upside? The upside is actually the Undying ability. Because there's a lot of decks, particularly black decks, which like it when non-token creatures die. And sometimes when your non-token creatures die, it can, depending on what type of body it is, it can be an upside. And This one is an upside because it comes back even bigger. It can also be a chump blocker, or it can go into a wizard's deck. There's just a lot of upsides that this card has. And so you might want to consider running it if your pod plays a lot of non-creature spells. Alright, next card. This card is a personal favorite of mine. Curse of the Restless Dead. It's 2 and a black. Enchant player. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under enchanted player's control, you create a 2/2 black zombie creature token with Decayed. And now, you may be already thinking of what this hates on. Those dirty, dirty green decks. But it also has the upside of you can enchant yourself for if you're playing a landfall deck. And Decayed Zombies are really good in aristocrat strategies as well. And so this just has a lot of upsides. You can punish the green decks if they have a green deck in your pod that plays a lot of lands. And if you don't have a green deck in your pod that plays a lot of lands, you just have an aristocrat strategy payoff, which is really good because it's just one more mana than a lot of the popular aristocrat enchantments that make tokens, but it can make a lot more tokens, and those tokens will die on die on their own because Decayed Zombies don't stick around that long. Next card on the list is Suit Imp. 1 black, flying. Whenever a player casts a non-black spell, that player loses 1 life. Now you all know what this is hating on. Every color that isn't black. Now, a lot of commander decks play more than 1 color. And even monocolored decks will sometimes play a lot of colorless spells. So if you build a deck with a lot of black spells, you can really be the one putting out ahead. And your opponents are probably not going to be playing too many black spells. So you can really get ahead. And if nothing else, this is a flying body. And there's a lot of commanders that really appreciate a flying body, even in black, like Gix. Alright, next card on my list. I love this card. I may be coping. This may be just a pet card, but I actually think it's a bit of a hate card as well. Riversong's Diary. 3 colorless for an artifact. Imprint. Whenever a player casts an instant or sorcery spell from their hand, exile it instead of putting it into a graveyard as it resolves. At the beginning of your upkeep, if there are 4 or more cards exiled with Riversong's Diary, choose one of them at random. You may cast it without paying its mana cost. I love this card because I think there may be a theme of I just hate Storm. And Storm can sometimes recast spells from their graveyard. And honestly, sometimes you gotta put a stop to that. But sometimes putting a stop to that can kind of feel bad, but this card makes putting a stop to it feel less bad because you get an upkeep trigger of casting a spell for free. And it can feel bad if you hit a counterspell off of this, but honestly, counterspells aren't played that too often. I mean, they are played. I play a lot of counterspells, guilty as charged. And I play a lot of counterspells with modal value, just so I can jam Riversong's Diary into more of my decks. But honestly, just it has 2 very valuable modes. Casting spells for free on upkeep and hating on instants and sorceries. And now, gotta move on to the next card, which I think is also hating on instants and sorceries. I think I just am a professional hater of instants and sorceries. This is Rod of Absorption. 2 and a blue. Whenever a player casts an instant or sorcery spell, exile it instead of putting it into a graveyard as it resolves. And then you can play X, tap, sacrifice Rod of Absorption. You may cast any number of spells from among cards exiled with Rod of Absorption with total mana value X or less without playing their mana cost. Now, I think this has two really good modes. Whenever a player casts an instant or sorcery spell, a player, not just you, exile it. Which means you're hating on some more Storm players. You can also hate on some green decks, because some of those green decks will be getting back their ramp spells, and I don't want that to happen. And you can also play Storm yourself with this card, because you can pay X and pay like 2, 3 and get back all your cheap Storm spells. So this has the upside of hating on other Storm players while also benefiting your own Storm plan. Alright, next card. Now I know this one might be a little bit of a crazy take, but hear me out. Goblin Welder, 1 red, creature, Goblin Artificer. Choose target artifact a player controls and a target artifact card in that player's graveyard. If both targets are still legal as this ability resolves, that player simultaneously sacrifices the artifact card and returns the artifact card to the battlefield. Now, I know that's a lot of words, but it basically just means you're going to replace an artifact on the battlefield with an artifact in the graveyard. And a lot of the times, most people use this on their own stuff. But there's actually a secret hate mode. And that secret hate mode is you can use it on any player. Which means if your opponent has a Portal to Phyrexia on the battlefield and you want to get rid of it, as long as they have another artifact in the graveyard, you can go bye-bye Portal to Phyrexia. And it also has the upside of you also are probably going to want to swap your own artifacts around a little bit too. So you can hate on other people secretly without them even realizing it, while also benefiting your own game plan, because there's a lot of good artifacts that you might have that might get removed, or you might want to swap around. Alright, now this next one, hear me out. Hear me out. 6, red, Worldfire. Sorcery. Exile all permanents. Exile all cards from all hands and graveyards. Each player's life total becomes 1. Now I know people hate land destruction, and I get why people hate land destruction, but I think this is one of the most fair land destruction cards that actually has a lot of upside. First off, setting life totals to 1 alleviates a lot of the bad feelings that other land destruction cards have. Because a lot of land destruction cards, they feel really bad because the game takes forever to drag on after the land destruction spell resolves. Well, this card sort of gets around that, because setting your life total to 1 makes it so the game isn't going to take that long. And you can also benefit it from yourself, because you can do stuff like running lower curves and running a 1 mana commander and running the Chandra that gives every opponent an emblem. And this kind of card will really hate on some of those greedier decks that have higher mana values. So as long as you build around this card, it's not going to feel as bad. Just remember that when you're putting this card in your deck, to maybe think about putting some more one drops, a one drop commander, a Chandra, or some burn lands. And then you'll be really hating on those greedy decks with that can't do things until turn 5 or 6. Now, last card. You gotta hear me out on this one too. I think this is a really good hate card. From the Ashes, 3 and a red. Sorcery. Destroy all non-basic lands. For each land destroyed this way, its controller may search his or her library for a basic land card and put it onto the battlefield. Then each player who shuffled his library this way shuffles it. There's a lot of really powerful non-basic lands that are gonna get out of hand really quickly. And sometimes you just want to destroy them. And sometimes destroying all of them or destroying one of them can cause a little bit of feel bads. But I think this card can really help get around one of the feel bads of destroying non-basic lands. And that's because it replaces them. So as long as your opponents have some basics in their deck, you're gonna alleviate a lot of the feels bad while also hating on some of the most powerful cards in Commander, non-basics. There's also a secret upside in that you can splash green. And when you splash green with this card, you can get a lot of landfall triggers off of your own card, which means you can alleviate a lot of the feels bads of destroying non-basic lands while also being a little bit cheeky and getting your own landfall triggers. Alright. Thank you everybody for watching my YouTube video. Tell me what some of your favorite hate cards in the comments. And leave some comments about how crazy I am for running Worldfire in a very small percentage of my decks. Alright, that's all everybody. Thank you. You guys have a nice day.